was in between jobs, and it was one of those situations where I said to myself, what am I going to do with, well, the rest of my life? And I got on the telephone and I started calling different places looking for a job. And after a full day of calling, it finally dawned on me that the instrument that I was using all day is something that we all need, that we all use. That's when I called the telephone company, and they told me to come down and put in an application. It was probably one of the best moves I ever made. In the morning, we all gather in the garage, and we pick up our work orders and are provided the equipment that we'll need throughout the day. And once you pick those work orders up, you're your own boss. You're on your own. And that's one of the things that I like about my job, the independence. You're never in the same place more than one day. And I like to change the scenery. I like the idea of that I can go anywhere in the world, and I have the background, I have the knowledge of telephones. Because no matter where you go in the world, people have telephones. A pre-wire is usually done in an unfinished home. When you first enter the building, you'll notice that it's only roughed in, which means that you'll find wood studs. The object of the pre-wire is to loop wire to different jacks in different rooms. A jack is the instrument that you plug the telephone in so that it works. Being an installer, you meet a lot of people. You meet people from all walks of life, from the Indian chief to the candlestick maker, doctors, lawyers, movie stars. When I, as an installer for the telephone company, go into someone's home and they're trusting enough to let me into their home, you don't represent the company. I noticed that some of the at that point, you are the company. Hanging. While I'm down here, I'll take care of that, too.
Oh, that'd be great. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
I don't have to have a membership to a racquetball club, tennis club, or swim club because I get my physical exercise on the job. And I enjoy being in the top physical condition. You're up about between 20 and 30 feet. We do have poles up to 50 feet. And again, as you're going up, you always have to be careful of the guy wires, other wires that are up there, especially electric, because we do have electric on top of the telephone poles. And that's one of the reasons why you wear the hard hat. Once you're up there, there's no problem. It's getting up and coming back down that is the biggest problem. Yeah, Jeff, this is Wes. Well, as we say, it's the best seat in the house. Okay, that's the 820. I would say one of the biggest challenges of the job. Hi, I'm Wes Hughes from the telephone company. Going up to a completely new service, a new house. And actually, it's almost like being an artist, because what you take into consideration is the location of the pole, where it will hit the house, how that wire will look coming down the side of the house and into the basement, and once it's in the basement, mounting the telephone equipment in the basement and running those wires to the various jacks in the house so that it's what we call spec or picture perfect. I want to be able to do and place that telephone anywhere that they want. I want to make them happy. That's my job.
I'm a television engineer. We are the guys behind the scenes to make sure that all the cameras, videotape equipment, switchers, things of that nature are provided to the directors. Right now I'm looking at some of the test signals that are used in the broadcast of television. We use the color bars for setting up our videotape machines, and it's a reference or a standard for broadcasters.
In dealing with problems associated with equipment and circuitry, we use all types of test equipment. Most of the stations have plenty of different types of test equipment available, both for audio testing and video to tape testing procedures. The tape machines have a lot of self-diagnostic circuits that enable you to troubleshoot problems. Some of the skills that have to be developed is to figure out what is happening in an amplifier, what component failed, and you have to have some manual dexterity too to remove components and solder. You have to have a good eye for finding some of the small problems that occur, whether it be a busted wire or bad solder joint or something like that. You have to analyze circuitry, learn how to read schematics. The video engineer has to have a good eye for color. He has to be able to discern between many different shades of colors and the saturations in the color portion of the picture.
Television isn't just pretty pictures. Television is high-quality audio. And part of the engineer's job is to make sure that the audio matches the video as far as quality goes. Now, before we saw the color bars pattern, which is used at the head of all our programs for a reference, the audio portion is similar. We use an oscillator, which is calibrated to 1,000 cycles, and we use this for a reference for all our equipment.
Most of the people that are working in broadcasting have got experience in small stations, either in high schools, college level broadcasting experience, and most of the engineering people have gone to either technical school or a vocational school for learning the basics of broadcasting. If you want to get into broadcasting, the first thing you have to do is get some basic courses down in electronics. Vocational schools are offering courses in electronics, and you can take communications courses in college. A lot of people, after high school, they get into the military for their training, and that is an excellent source of information and training for electronics. It's amazing how many things that we take for granted in broadcasting. Everybody at home thinks that turn the set on and there it is, away we go. The program just comes out down the antenna wire and we see a whole program. But really, there's so many things that make up a show, both in the recording and the transmission. Technology is just exciting today. It's almost mystical to have pictures come through the air and appear at your TV set.
I always think that an editor really makes the film. They have all the footage that the director and the cameraman and all the rest of the people in production has provided him. And he has to make it work. He has to put it together, make it flow. Even though you might have a full script in front of you, what looks good on paper sometimes just doesn't come out right on film. So as an editor, you have to turn it around a little bit and change it so that it looks believable on the screen. This thing what I'm working on here is it's an editing console, and it's a beautiful piece of equipment because you used to have to use a set of rewinds and a viewer, which made it a little bit difficult because, as you're probably aware, the film runs at 24 frames per second, and it's difficult to wind it at that speed. And this thing runs at 24 frames per second, which means that I hear the sound correctly. The other nice thing about it is the fact that I have two sound heads, so I can go ahead and add another track. Say, for example, I might be putting sound effects on here, and I have the opportunity to actually add music at the same time. I attended Boston University, where I got a degree in audiovisual communications, and I found that editing was the real creative craft of filmmaking, and that's what I was interested in. So I went ahead and pursued the field, and I was fortunate. I was able to land the job immediately upon graduation. And, of course, some of the things I had to do at first were kind of menial tasks, but the owner of the organization saw that I was relatively a creative person. I could make things work on the screen. He gave me the opportunity to do some editing. Yeah, Art here. Yeah, hi. Hey. Yeah, I'm on the bus scene now. Yeah, well, as the director, you have to do me a little favor. I'm going to need some cricket sounds because, as you know, when I have to work with other people, it sometimes is a little bit difficult to share creative responsibility in making a film because the other person with whom you may be working, either it be the client or the director, although I have few problems with directors because that's why they choose to work with me, because we think very much alike, so that there's very little conflict often. But sometimes the client is involved if it's an industrial film or if it's a TV commercial, and we have somewhat different tastes. I'm not saying that theirs is wrong and mine is right, but I often have to give in. But sometimes, again, there is compromise. They'll listen to me, they'll listen to some of my ideas, and we can kind of come to a joint agreement as to what might be best for a particular sequence or a particular film. Some people think that, that the whole job is probably not enjoyable because you're often alone sitting there at the editing console, few people around. But I never feel that because I'm creating something's coming to life almost in front of my eyes as I splice footage together, and to me it isn't lonely at all. The film is keeping me company, and of course I think the most satisfying part of my job is to actually see the film come alive. And a lot of times people say, well, really, it's the doing that's the most satisfying. And it is satisfying for me to be making films. But I still have a great deal of satisfaction when I see the thing completed and on the screen, and especially if everything works the way I had foreseen it or close to it. And it's like not only giving birth to a baby, but seeing it grow up. Often I'm involved in social documentaries that try to change people's opinions about many things. And if I'm creating this, and the film does eventually have an effect on a lot of people, I have a great deal of satisfaction because of that.
Historically, photojournalists were in the business of documenting what is the human doing in his environment at any given moment. In the tradition of that, I still do the same thing. I look at myself a lot as a sociologist with a camera. Instead of using a questionnaire, I use a camera. My responsibility essentially is to illustrate what the Times deems as important enough to do stories on. My job is to try to document visually what the reporters are talking about. When I first come in every morning, the thing that I have to do is find out what is happening in the city for that day that needs possible photo coverage. So I go and I get from the assignment the stories I'll be covering that day. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's two, sometimes it's three.
How are you doing? All right. What's going on?
Today's assignment is to go and to take photographs of high school children being administered inoculations by the health department.
Give me a shout on the radio, two-way radio, when you get there and see how it's shaping up.
Okay.
Okay?
Good. Okay. The tools of my trade is the camera. The fundamental accessory I need is film, 35 millimeter film. I use two lenses. I use a wide-angle lens and I use one telephoto lens. That's what I work with.
Have you gotten your shots? No. Not yet. I want to see the arm that's going to get shot. Good. Strong arms. Hold them up there. I can't see them.
The difficulty about this morning was trying to let the personality of the moment surface. And I see photographs much like steam coming off of water. They surface. They surface at their own time and at their own rate. Because I think photography, for me, essentially is heading people off at the pass. How do you anticipate something and then position yourself so that you're in the right place at the right moment when that thing comes along?
New York Times. How you spell your last name?
R-I-D-D.
What makes a good photojournalist is definitely someone who can pay attention to the who, what, where, why, but also someone who has, I think, an intuitive feeling of compassion, or who can get inside a subject and who can really drain it for all it's worth.
My man is brave here. You gonna come through like a champ. Like a champ. Show them how they're supposed to take it, Bridget. You got to take it in both arms? Oh, that's great. Come on. Hey, go ahead on, Bridget. Go ahead on, Bridget.
Relax, no.
Big time, Bridget here. Relax, Bridget.
Relax your arm. Don't snatch away, okay? Because you snatch away to cut yourself.
You're going to have one.
That's it for that one.
Bridget, you're not going to cry, are you?
They want to affect my football game, Ma.
Bridget, you're doing great.
You go to the Army.
Doing great, Bridget.
One approach to getting in photography is to take courses and go through school, or another approach is the way I did it, is to attach yourself into in a mentor relationship. I was lucky that there was another photographer who lived in the same town where I went to school, who was a much older person who did photographs that I also liked, and I felt that I could learn from him, because he could teach me the fundamentals I needed at the time. I needed the fundamentals of learning how to make sure that all of my exposures came out, of knowing the difference between different cameras and how they worked. Another thing that I get a chance to do is looking for what I call day art. And day art essentially is trying to capture in photographs the meaning of the day or how people use that day. It might be a rich person, it might be a poor person, it might be a woman, might be a child. Whatever it is something that is common to all of us, and we all have a feeling for, and I try to show that. When I return from the field taking my photographs of the stories of the day, the first thing I have to do is process the film. After that's done, I then edit the film on a light box. I take the whole roll out and I look at it from frame to frame, and I pick out the strongest images on those frames that I think really tells the story. I then notch those particular negatives that I want to have prints made, and then a printer, another darkroom technician, takes those negatives, go and make prints and contacts.
I think it's very dramatic somehow.
Taking the photograph is not everything in this field. You can be a good printer, you can be a good developer, and people should shop around and find what's best for them.
This turned out pretty nicely for backlighting. You see that burn the top of the head and everything else?
Thank you.
Okay, Jess, anytime.
When the prints come back, I then look at the prints and I type out the caption material. That's information for the editors, the word people outside, to tell them exactly who, what, where, and why. At that point, when the caption material is put on the back of the prints, I then take the prints out to the respective editor.
Get a memo today.
John Derniak is the picture editor. And John's most important concern is A1. What does the cover of the newspaper look like? So it's important to get a picture to John as soon as possible before the 5 o'clock meeting when these decisions are being made. There are a lot of great things about being a photographer here, because you never know what to expect from day to day. The high point is when a photograph that you do care about does get a big display and is used very well in the paper. And I think that's very exciting.